the Daf Yomi. Friends, we're on page number 5 of Masechet Menachot, making fantastic progress over here as we deliver every single day a tidbit on the daily page of the Daf Yomi. And actually wanted to do a special edition of it because we are going to explore today's page on number 5. Also, we're going to go back to the introduction because many people have been requesting what is Menachot, just to know about the order within regards to this tractate, what it actually entails. When we're talking about Menachot, what are we actually talking about? But let's first of all talk about today's page, where today's page on number 5 is investigating the mistakes in the Omer meal offering. That's what we're concentrating on today. Now, we know on yesterday's page, on page number 4, we learned about a unique meal offering, the Minchat HaOmer. And we're going to speak all about the different terminologies in due course. The Minchat HaOmer that was brought on the day after the first day of Passover, and whose purpose was to permit use of the grain for the new harvest. This was what it was. And a great rabbi of the name Rav, he would teach that in this case, if the Kohen took the required fistful of flour shelo lishma with inappropriate intentions, this Minchat HaOmer is totally going to be pasul, invalid. That's what we learn about. Since the purpose of this mincha was to permit the new harvest, and it did not fulfill that purpose over there. Now, on today's page, we find that not all of the rabbis are going to agree with the ruling of Rav over here. Enter Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. Rabbi Lakish is going to rule that in such a case, the meal offering remains valid, and the comments, which is spoken about before, the fistful of the flour taken from the mincha, can be offered on the altar. Nevertheless, let's say the remaining amounts of the flour cannot be eaten by the priest, by the Kohanim, until a second Minchat Omer will be brought. Since the first one did not fulfill the necessary requirement, and the new grain had not yet been permitted. Now, Rav Papa is going to come in and explain that this is based on the fact that Reish Lakish believes that the new grain becomes permitted automatically with dawn of the morning of the 16th day of Nisan, happens to be. Obviously, we have to look back at Vayikra chapter 23. Although bringing the special Minchat Omer is required, if the sacrifice can be brought, and we have to just investigate on that further. Now, it's actually going to be interesting because Rava over here is going to disagree with both Rav and Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, and he's going to rule that the Minchat HaOmer is valid and succeeds in permitting the new grain, even if the Kohen had improper intentions at the time that he took the comments. He's going to argue that the Minchat HaOmer really is unique, let's say, in as much as it is the only meal offering brought from barley. All others obviously are brought from wheat. So the ordinary sacrificial rules do not apply. Now Rashi is going to explain that according to this approach, the Minchat HaOmer should not be viewed as a sacrifice, but simply as a required method of permitting new grain. Therefore, the ordinary rules of sacrifice will not apply to it. Now, I just want to go over the introduction here in Masechet Menachot, because many people have been requesting it. Again, they missed that Daf Bet video that we did record previously over here. So, what is Menachot over here? It's obviously a sister tractate to Masechet Zvachim, which thankfully we finished only a few days ago, and we did a grand siyum. So it's a sister tractate, Masechet. Both of these tractates, Masechtot, they focus on rules and regulations associated, let's say, with a korbanot service, the sacrificial service. Although Masechet Zvachim we saw deals, let's say, with sacrifices brought more from living creatures, obviously that are slaughtered, like animals and fowl, Masechet Menachot is about more korbanot, let's just say, that originates more from the world of plants. Let's say meal offerings brought from grains like wheat and barley, and obviously libations being from wine and oil. So very much speak about that, and we speak about flour, I think, inside the Torah and Parshat Shelach Lecha, if I'm not mistaken. So very interesting book of Bamidbar. But just as in obviously the case regarding animal korbanot, animal sacrifices, we find a variation of different sacrifices in the general category of menachot. There are those that are, let's say, voluntary, those that are obligatory, and those that come to effect as the kapara, as an atonement for transgression. There are those brought by individuals and those brought on behalf of the community. Now, another parallel, let's just say, to animal sacrifice is the fact that while some parts are going to be burned on the altar, on the mizbeach, other parts are given to the priests, to the kohanim to eat. But there are differences. For example, all menachot are considered kodshei kodashim. They're the highest level of holiness, and they can only be eaten by male kohanim in the temple, the courtyard, the Bet HaMikdash courtyard, respectively. Now, the sacrificial service that we find for a mincha is similar to that of an animal sacrifice. Let's say after preparing the meal offering, the priest, the kohen, takes this komet, again a fistful from the mixture, from this taruvot, and will place it in one of the temple vessels to, let's say, sanctify it. And he carries to the altar and burns it on the altar. From that time, let's say, the remnants will be permitted to the priests to eat, the kohanim. There are four main activities of the mincha parallel to an animal sacrifice. Rav Adin Steinsaltz brings, and the OU bring it down a bit. What are these four parallels? The first one, the kmitza. Taking the fistful of flour, this actually is going to parallel the shechita process, the slaughtering of the animal. The next one is the placing the comets in the Bet HaMikdash vessel. This will parallel collecting the blood in a temple vessel. The third one, carrying the comets to the altar, is going to parallel carrying the blood to the altar. And the final one, burning the comets on the altar, let's say, will parallel the sprinkling the blood on the altar, respectively. Now, it's during these four acts, Rav Steinsaltz says, that inappropriate thoughts over here at this point in time will disqualify this sacrifice. So it shows how important kavanot, intentions, are. Thus, the comets of the meal offering and the blood of the animal sacrifice symbolize over here the kapara, the atonement that's offered by this korban, this sacrifice, and completes that service. The completing of the service allows the rest of the sacrifice to be eaten or brought on the altar in the appropriate fashion over here. Now, among the differences between these sacrifices is the fact that an animal sacrifice is ready to be slaughtered and brought to the altar with minimal preparation. Well, let's say meal offerings over here must be prepared from different ingredients we're going to have. For example, obviously, we've spoken about it before, flour, oil, frankincense, or obviously known as liver nut, which we're going to talk about in tomorrow's edition. And this is all there in order to be ready for sacrifice. Now, let's say in reality, the first two tractates in Sefer Kodashim, Zavachim and Menachot, over here, constitute like a completion, a whole dealing with sacrificial service, in as much as each contains elements of ritual law that apply to the other. The latter part, obviously, which we're going to come in progress in the coming time period of Masechet Menachot, will appear to be a summation of general klalim rules of sacrifices, and it will conclude, obviously, we're going to see in the Mishnah quoting passages that appear regarding animal sacrifice. Very much we're going to see in, I think, Parshat Kedoshin, in chapter number 1 over there, verses 9 to 17, and meal offerings, which we're going to see about in Vayikra in chapter 2, verse 2. That's actually Parshat Vayikra. This will agree that both are offerings desired by God, allowing the Mishnah to close by teaching that it makes no difference whether one offers much or little, so long as he directs his heart towards heaven. This a phrase you'll see all over the Torah and over the commentaries. Now, meal offerings now, friends, can be categorized in numbers of different kinds of ways over here. So let's see the different categories that the meal offering can actually be brought in. First one is according to obligation. The mincha can be brought voluntary, obligatory, and can be brought to the effect of atonement to transgression. The next category is according to who is bringing it. We know the mincha can be brought by individuals on behalf of the community. That's what we spoke about in the introduction of Masechet Zvachim of about 4 months ago. Now, it can also be done according to the ingredients. The mincha can be brought from wheat or barley. It may contain oil or frankincense, also known as levona, both of them or neither of them. It could be done according to the method of preparation. Some meal offerings are simply mixtures to aruvot, or flour, while others involve a process of cooking, baking or frying. Let's say while most meal offerings are baked as matzah, there are some that are allowed to rise and become chametz. Most meal offerings can be brought on their own, but there are some that are brought together with animal sacrifices, we have to point out. And most meal offerings have this kometz, a fistful, taken to be burned on the altar, but obviously there's exceptions to this rule. Now, I think in totality, there's 15 different types of menachot. 11 are brought by individuals, 3 are brought by the community, and there's one libation brought in conjunction with many animal sacrifices. I think we very much see this in Parshat Shlach Lecha in chapter number 15 over there. Okay, so let's talk about the meal offerings brought by individuals. What does that include? Now, I think we have to point out, Rav Adin Seinzelt actually points out the first 5 voluntary menachot, which are enumerated by the Torah, I think especially according to method of preparation. Very much, we will see this in chapter 2 of Sefer Vayikra and Parshat Vayikra, between verses 1 and 10. The first one is a simple flour mixture. The second is chalot, obviously unleavened cakes. The third is known as rekikim. These are unleavened wafers. The third one is also known as machavat, fried. The fifth one is known as cooked, obviously popularly known as marcheshet. The sixth, when a person is obligated to bring a sacrifice for one of a number of transgressions, in the event that he cannot afford a more expensive sacrifice, he can bring a meal offering. This is very much featured in Sefer Vayikra, chapter 5, verse 1 to 13, over there. The seventh is the meal offering brought by a sotah, which spoke about in Masechet Sotah a lot, a woman suspected of an affair. This, I think, very much featured in Parshat Naso, in Sefer Bamidbar. The eighth one is a meal offering brought by Cohen, who begins his service in the Bet Mikdash. I think this we learn about in Parshat Tzav in chapter 6, verse 13 in the book of Vayikra. The ninth one is the daily meal offering brought by the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, in the morning and the afternoon. Very much see this in chapter number 6, verse 15 in Vayikra. The 10th one is chalot. What is chalot? Brought together with a korban todah, a thanksgiving offering. That's also very much featured in the Torah portion of Tzav in the book of Vayikra, I think, chapter 7, verses 12 to 14. And 11th is the loaves brought by the Nazarite, who obviously has completed his period of Nizirut. Once again, we've got to see Parshat Naso within regards to that. Now, just to conclude over here, meal offerings are brought by the community. What do they include? They include 3 specific things. The first one is a minchat ha'omer. What is this? The minchat ha'omer is a meal offering brought on Pesach, the Jewish festival of Pesach, obviously celebrating the new harvest. Obviously, we very much see this in chapter 23 of Parshat Sefer Vayikra, I think Parshat Emor, if I'm not mistaken, between verses 10 and 11. Then there's the Shtei Halechem. What's that? The 2 loaves that are brought on the Jewish festival of Shavuot, celebrating the new harvest. Very much we see this in Vayikra chapter 23, 17, obviously in Parshat Emor. Then the Lechem HaPanim, which is the 12 loaves placed on the table in the Bet HaMikdash on a weekly basis. That obviously, once again, I believe is once again also in Parshat Emor, chapter 24, verses 5 to number 8. Now we know that Masechet Menachot over here devotes a significant space to robust conversations of a number of laws that have no direct connection with sacrifice, but since they were mentioned in various Mishnayot, they are going to be discussed at length. What does this include? Topics of discussion we're going to see include tzitzit, tefillin, and mezuzah, and it's very much found in Masechet Menachot. And let's just say these topics are mentioned in other tractates also. Masechet Menachot is the main makor, the main source of information when rulings on these matters itself will appear in various halachic works. So that's very much what we see. A very, very exciting time to actually achieve this at the moment, as we're going to go into various other tractates. Just to give a sneak preview, because tomorrow in Daf number 6, we're going to learn all about Levanol, frankincense, which we mentioned about already on today's page. And we know that just this whole thing of taking the comets, the fistful of flour from a meal offering, obviously we're going to learn tomorrow that it must be done properly. And we're going to see that the Mishnah is going to, let's say, offer lists of situations that are considered to be improper and will render the offering invalid. And that's what we're speaking about in the introduction over here, that you need intention, you need the right kavanot, the right intentions when doing the sacrifice. Among these, just to give a sneak preview, includes a non-priest or a priest who was in mourning or was not wearing the official, let's say, robes, priestly robes he's meant to be doing, who had not washed his hands or feet. You can see how important all the different codes of conduct are over here. Or a priest that was uncircumcised, that didn't have a Brit Milah, or a priest that was ritually defiled, or who was sitting at the time, or who removed the handful with his left hand. It just shows how important code of conduct it must be within regards to the Korbanot service. We're going to see also tomorrow that the Mishnah is in itself going to continue and talk about the taking of the comets, which someone might have picked up, like a small stone or grain or salt or drop of frankincense. This could potentially also invalidate, let's say, the korban, obviously, because it could be seen as too little of a measure. And we're going to see different reasons for the various different rules within regards to comets, within regards to how it has a specific size, how it must be taken, and so on and so forth within regards to that. We're going to see that Rob Adin Steinsaltz, so what's brilliant about his notes is that he'll give the science also behind the topics that we're talking about. For example, he will give the history behind the object all throughout his notes in the Koran editions of the Gemara, which I very much recommend everyone to get a set of the Koran Talmud itself. He will actually point out, which we can learn about in tomorrow's page, that the frankincense mentioned is the levona that was required for the incense of the Bet HaMikdash. And he identifies over there that the resin that oozes from a certain type of tree, also known as a boswellia, actually grows in Eastern Africa on the Arabian Peninsula. And he talks about where this actually comes from, which part and what barks it actually comes from. And he actually notes that the frankincense that was used as incense from ancient times was also used for medicinal purposes, also, but very, very interesting. And I recommend everyone to look at his notes over here as we're going to go and continue, let's say, this encyclopedic conglomeration of what we're learning about here in Masechet Menachot. So we're speaking about page number 6 today, and we actually went back to the introduction of Masechet Menachot, so we'll know like the various different klalim and rules inside this tractate over here. So please, everyone, watch over the previous videos we've recorded on this beautiful tractate, and if you haven't joined our community, please join it, as we've got some phenomenal, let's just say, great content coming out over here in due course. So wish you all a fantastic day, and please watch over the previous videos. We've already recorded on this series of the daily page of Daf Yomi about 1,100 videos. We started all the way back in Masechet Ketubot, if many of you would have been watching since the beginning. And now already, that was right at the beginning of Masechet Ketubot. I think it was back in May 2022. Now we're in 2026 over here. And we are, thankfully, already in Masechet Menachot. The goal is to at least finish the entire Shas. And then maybe we're going to have other ideas. So maybe a project maybe we want to do later on is to maybe record a long video every single day where we will actually go inside the Gemara and learn it together, maybe for a half an hour session. And get a big ambition of mine will be to learn together the Sephardic approach to learning Talmud on a daily basis in the Daf Yomi. That would be definitely a brilliant achievement. But Bezrat Hashem, we will do that in due course. So wish you all a great day and take care. Thanks for watching.